We will talk today about self-service product analytics. And wait, don't stop watching. Okay, I know I said the bad word, self-service analytics. And to be true, self-service analytics doesn't have a good reputation. And I think there are plenty of reasons for that. The major reason for it is too high expectations. Often when I see someone approaching self-service analytics, is we prepare a data set in product analytics. So we have everything in Mixpanel, for example, and then we just create an account for all people in the product team. And maybe we do one training and that's it. From there, off you go. Have much success finding things. This naturally cannot really work. We have to meet product teams in the middle. And we have to make sure that we do more things, because the other extreme is we don't do anything of that. And then product team, there you will always find people in the product team who are very eager to use some data for their product decisions. And so they will build something up where you in the end as a data team or as a product analyst will say, we can't use this. You calculated this kind of metric in a way that we never use somewhere else like this. And so if we discuss it with, for example, some BI data, it will never match up and it will create a lot of chaos. We have to find a way somewhere in the middle. And today I share my experiences with self-service for product analytics. And I show you how I'm trying to create this foundation so that we as a data team or that we as product analysts can provide to our product teams that enables them to go beyond that. I strongly believe that we have to enable different levels of self-service analytics because there's so much domain knowledge in our product teams that just does the magic when it is combined with the right kind of data. This is something that I want to enable, but from my experience, you really need a well-defined foundation so that you can enable really good self-service analytics in product analytics. Let's get started. This video is sponsored by Mixpanel. Mixpanel has a new way to do product analytics with your warehouse data. You can connect Mixpanel to your data warehouse, and then you can run all the product analytics investigations and all the product analytics deep dives on top of your data warehouse data with clean, prepared, and high-quality data. Check out the link in the description to learn more about the offering. I'm using it, and I'm extremely happy to have this new kind of setup for product analytics because it unlocks so many more use cases on top of much better data than before. As a disclaimer, this is like how I approach self-service analytics in the last years. And I can tell you, it's definitely a journey how I ended up here. And I will not say that this will be the same way that I might use in 2 or 3 years going forward. It's evolving, it's developing, but I definitely wanted to share with you my current approach, which I can see at least works well enough for me. Let's take a step back and start introducing what makes self-service analytics sound so great, but then, of course, be so complicated. I think we have two very opposite ends. Here on the right, we have short time from question to insight. So this is in the end like what every product team, what every business teams would love to have. They sit in a meeting, they discuss specific kind of situations. They think, okay, it would be really good to look at the data for it. And so they formulate some questions they have. And of course, they want to get some insights into this. In the end, where they want to get to is to a decision. Let's say short time, question to insight to decision. So this is something that all business teams, and today we're talking mostly about product teams, which product teams would like to have. On the other side of the spectrum, we have something which we can call data foundation. It's a very abstract term, but right metrics, right data. Okay, let's call this right metrics and right data. It can be a lot bigger than this, but one thing that can happen, and let's draw a line between these, and so it also has two sides. This is the spectrum we are moving in here. And what I saw in the practice is like, product team introduces their own data stack. They do their own stuff. And because they wanted to have a short time from question to insight to decision, but they don't align with the data foundation that the company have. Maybe let's even call this like a company data foundation. Best example is product comes up with a metric for new subscriptions that never matches with this one. And this creates a lot of problems, a lot of communication problems. There's a meeting, I don't know, let's say different kind of stakeholders invited, product is there, sales is there. Someone from the data team is there, management is there, marketing is there, and they discuss, okay, how can we improve subscriptions, whatever. Then product presents something and they show, okay, look, we have this conversion rate to subscription. Then everyone else in the room is, wait a second, how many subscriptions do you have the last month? And then, but in the reporting that the management was using, we had a different number. And then this discussion goes on. And product tells, no, we're using a different system. We do this. And so this is just one example of what can go wrong, but there are plenty of more. The solution that often product teams see is, hey, we do it ourselves, doesn't really work because it doesn't really connect to the rest of the company. No one will trust that kind of data. And so no one will, like when they say, look, we made these backlog decisions based on our data, everyone will say, yeah, fine, great. But no one trusts your data. On the other hand, when we go on the other side of the spectrum and we say, look, everything that product is doing has to go through data team, has to be aligned with the very strong data foundation that we have, well-defined metrics, a lot of tests so that really stuff is working, ideally, so that we don't have to ask the question anymore, do we trust the data? But this will not lead to a short time from question to insights. This will lead to this weird setup where then product will create tickets for the data team to say, hey, look, we are launching a new feature. We want to test this. We want to understand this. What is your bandwidth? Can you provide us with some insights, with some feature performance reports? Can you do some analysis once the feature is live to tell us, okay, does it really work or not? And then the data team says, yeah, sure, we can. Based on our backlog, I would say we have capacity for that, like in 4 months. The product, like, we want to launch in 3 weeks, naturally. This creates this kind of tension. And this is like what makes self-service so hard, because you have to balance two things. Ideally, you want to have short time from question to insight with great company data foundations. Naturally, you want to have this. And there are definitely ways to work towards this. But so what I want to share today is like my approach, how I, in the end, can incorporate still a good data foundation, but still enable more short time, more questions to insight for the data team. And so the way how I approach this topic is I create product specific foundations. And okay, what is the difference between company data foundation to product-specific foundations? Of course, like it's an abstract concept, but let me explain this. Company data foundation usually includes all the company. It has a lot of financial stuff in there, so it's a big asset. So we don't really want to care about this. When I talk about product-specific foundations, means like I can prepare things in advance when I work closely with the product team by understanding how the product works, how customer journeys works, how user journeys work. And based on that, I can create a foundation that explains with data how the whole product system works. When I have this kind of system map in place, and we will get into an example in a second. When I have this in place, if product comes around and say, look, we are releasing a new feature, can you please help us? It's much easier for me to take what we already have, all the different kind of building blocks, extend it a little bit on the foundational level, and then provide the product team with the right tools or the right building blocks that they can then start to analyze the data. And analyze the data, we will not build full-fledged dashboards for them. We will not go into any kind of crazy deep analysis. No, in the end, we provide them with the building blocks that they can then do it on their own. And we can establish a product analytics process that works pretty much the same whenever product is doing something. And product most of the time releasing new features. It's a pretty obvious process. We can definitely just build something around that and already serve, let's say, 70% of the needs of the product team. But this is something as a product analyst that you can invest time into this, and this will definitely pay off. You invest time to build specific foundations, and These foundations, to give you some examples, these foundations are product metric system. We can system, tree, map, however we want to call this. We need this in place. I will show you in a second how this helps significantly. Then, of course, since product is a lot about people's interactions, people journeys, we need a strong event schema, product event schema that is already in place, that in the end, if you want to extend it, it's pretty straightforward for you to do that. And with these two things on the foundational level, you can already cover a lot and you can already speed up things significantly. And when we go then into the process so we develop checklists. When product is working on new features, you understand how their feature development process looks like. And you find basically the places where you can hook in. And you can develop checklists for that. In the end, you make clear that everyone knows exactly what's happening when they develop a new feature, what's happening on the data side. So how you can support when they have to get you in and what you can provide to this. And you can create templates to do this. You can create a page how we extend the metric system. You can create examples how we extend product event schema, what we make sure. The nice thing is once you start to standardize it a lot more, you basically do classic product work. You have the V1 version of all this here. And then once with every feature that's released, you develop like the checklist, you develop the templates. And so you get better and better because you incorporate different kind of things. The important thing here is really like standardizing everything because this makes it predictable. And it also makes it a lot easier for you to execute, that you not always have to rethink everything when someone comes around saying, hey, we want to get for a new feature. You can say, yeah, okay, this kicks off this kind of process. Let's get started. We definitely know already what we have to do next. This helps a lot. But again, this would be like a typical slide presentation where I can just say high level, hey, this is how you solve self-service for product analytics. No, I don't want to stay there because this is the part where I usually get disappointed when I watch other kind of videos. No, I want to show you this with a specific example. Our scenario is the following. Our product is a whiteboard product like this one. So this is also like whiteboard. So nothing really complicated and special, would you think? But in the end, like every product has its depth. We are the product analysts. We're supporting our product team who's building the whiteboard application. And the product team at the moment is tinkering with some ideas to, of course, in the end, they want to generate more subscriptions. But so one thing that they want to get better at is like when someone starts to use the product, they want to help them better to understand how they get to a valuable experience much quicker. Sounds a little bit abstract, but in the end, like means like, so I open this up, it's a blank slate. And so they want to help me to get to something like this here, that in the end, I understand how to work with the whiteboard. To get something which I potentially want to share with someone, where we would then say, okay, if I share a board, it looks like that I got some kind of value out of it. This is where the product team at the moment are working on. They did user interviews, they did other kind of research. They sit together with us from the data team to think about how we should do this. And the good thing is we from the data analyst side have already prepared something. And this is our high-level snapshots. In practice, this is a metric tree. We can call it a metric map or whatever. I think this is still like something that people have to figure out how we in the end name this thing. But let's call it metric tree because this is what most people at the moment call it. It's a simplified version. So let's say the original is a lot bigger, has more details to it. So for example, this is like a map in itself, like the whole MRR bridge. So how MRR is calculated and so on. So we just take a snapshot from here. But what this metric tree helps us already is when we sit down with the product team, it's like to say, okay, actually, where do we tackle? Let's say where our initiatives is trying to move some metrics here. And ideally, they want to increase new subscriptions. New subscriptions, but it's a lagging metric. They cannot really directly influence it unless they go around and give people $50 to say, hey, sign up or so, which they won't do. We cannot really influence new subscriptions. We come down a level deeper. So we have users with VX. VX, in my case, usually means valuable experience. This, for example, are users that are sharing their whiteboards or that are presenting their whiteboards or that they're exporting their whiteboards. We can assume they achieved something that looks valuable for them, so they are happy to share it with the world. This is one example. There are other examples for valuable experience as well. This is already something which gives us more operational room to work with. And so this, of course, like this is where our product team is looking at. They want to increase the number of users with a valuable experience because, so the theory, these are the users that will, in the end, convert into new subscriptions. There might be edge cases where someone signs up on our platform, doesn't do anything, and just goes immediately into subscription. Might happen. But let's say right now, product team is pretty confident, and we basically could also prove it with the data that at least like 95% of the new subscriptions come from users that already had at least one valuable experience, but usually more over a longer time period. This seems to be an actionable step to get more users into this valuable experience. What they are thinking about, and they got it out from the interviews, they got an insight from the interviews, when someone starts to using the product, the new users we have here, there's a great chance, because there's a high motivation at this kind of moment, that they want to understand how to create something valuable. They already decided to sign up. They basically blocked time for us to test things out. It's much harder when we lose them after this first sign up to get them back and say, look, now maybe a good time to figure out how the product works. No, we have their attention. This is very valuable. And so we want to see how these new users can maybe get into a valuable experience, where we can now help the product team. And this is what I mean with foundation is, we can now, when we sit together, how can we establish a separate metric set, which goes more into details, that explains the impact on new users to valuable experience. Because with this foundation, the product team immediately knows where they're influencing things on the whole picture. They get a good feeling, does it really make sense to invest into this? And they understand the numbers that they're generating later a lot better than if we don't do this. So this is one foundational work that I find really valuable when I work with product teams. Let's quickly do that. If we want to do this, we might have to break up things a little bit more. We have total users and users with VX. The new users we have basically show here, but they have no impact in here. We should definitely break down users with VX into new users with VX. And let's say if we really want to make it very simple, we can just do returning users with VX. So this is the most simplest breakdown what we can do. We could break down this returning users into a lot more crazy stuff like retained users, resurrected users, churned users, and so on. If we really want to understand how users with VX are behaving, there are possible ways to make it more complex, but right now we go for the simple breakdown. We break down this metric users with VX into new users and returning users. And this makes sense for us because the new users is something we can want to now establish as a new metric, because this now helps our product team to see what they do definitely has an impact. And also it helps them to communicate to management, look, we are making some progress here. Okay, these are now making up this. And in the end, so the new users together with how many users do we actually get into a valuable experience now makes up this kind of metric here. And we can clean this up a little bit more, maybe make it a little bit more readable. But in the end, I think it makes it clear. So we could, for example, think about, okay, should we get rid of this kind of metric? Because we now have a dead end here, because like we construct this in a different way. But again, like total users might be still something which might be interesting for us. We can get rid of this. We just keep it in there. So now we have this new user VX rate. And of course, like here, retained users would then make up the returning users with VX with the same kind of VX rate as well. The good thing is with this new user VX rate, so new user valuable experience rates, how many users do we get into a valuable experience? We introduce a metric for the product team to focus on. So now we have something which we can call a North Star metric. So again, this is not a North Star metric. This is also not a North Star metric because we cannot influence it directly with the user experience. This is something we can influence with our user experience, and we can make it to our North Star metric. This is definitely a good candidate here to do that. And so with this, we help our product team to understand, okay, against which kind of metrics they're working on, and we can provide this kind of metric as well. The product team already went a step further. So they said, look, we take best practices we know from other products. They have an onboarding sequence. Onboarding is a very helpful asset that can improve getting new users to a valuable experience much easier. This is something we can work on so we can operationalize our work here. What we can now do from our data team approach is, okay, when we talk about, let's say, the onboarding, how can we formulate this into the metrics here? What we can do is we can have, let's say, onboarding started, and then let's say the product team decides to go first for a simple approach. They just record a video, short one, 1 minute, where like someone is showing around how to use the product. Onboarding, video watched. These are two good metrics that we have here. And naturally, so we also have a conversion rate. This is onboarding success rate. This means we're going from here to here. We're also going from here to here. These two calculate how many onboarding videos have been watched. And then we will not have a direct connection between these two. Let's make it like this. But this is something that we as a data team can analyze. This gives us a job where the data team can really shine. Data team inference analysis. This is something where the data team can really have a job. So the data team can do a impact analysis on this connection between someone watches an onboarding video to new user valuable experience rate. This is something where we can go in and can say, okay, this is actually our job. Everything else around that is here. We just prepare for the product team to work and analyze this, because product team will test different kind of videos there, and they want to make this an ongoing effort. They want to fine tune the different kind of videos. They want to go as deep as possible in this kind of area, but still want to understand then how this translates to this. And this is like where we as a data team can help with directly working, but we don't create all these reports or insights and so on. And here we focus our time here because it's much more valuable. This is great. In the end, product team came up with a new idea, what they want to test out. And the first step, what we did is, no, we didn't say, hey, we create a dashboard for you. We actually create this foundation for you. So we help you to understand, okay, what are the right kind of metrics we should focus on? And based on that, we can then, because it's our second job, we then just provide you with the new event data that we need to collect for this. And so based on that, it's pretty straightforward. Naturally, we need something like onboarding started, as we have here, and then we maybe also onboarding video watched, because we have this, and then we might need some information about the video IDs. It's because this is what the product team is planning to use different kind of things. But this is just the output from this. And so it's pretty straightforward to already know, okay, this is the data that we have to collect. Then the data team can provide this. So product team say, look, when we work with the developers, make sure that we track this. And so data team can discuss with developers, how do we get this? Should we get this from the front end? Maybe can we hook up in some backend processes? Maybe can we just access the database? Really just get this kind of data. We make sure that the data is there. How we do it, our job, we will figure it out. Again, foundational stuff. Foundational stuff is we prepared the new metric setup. We also prepare us that we can make an impact analysis on people doing this to this. And then, of course, like we make sure that we collect the right kind of data. With this, we can then go, for example, in a tool like Mixpanel, and we can just build everything out for the product team. As I said, I told you before, we build out some tools that they can start to work with. And so what do I mean with that? It's not like that we create dashboards or really different kind of analysis. So what I usually do is I build a basic tool set in Mixpanel that then product and also like other teams who are interested in this kind of feature can then take and break it up to them. So to quickly show you how I do this. So let's go into Mixpanel. What we already did is we have a data warehouse integration where we get all our whiteboard event data into Mixpanel. I showed this in different kind of videos, and if you're really interested, just check out the other videos in my channel. I went into much detail how a data team can prepare event data from different kind of sources and make them available in a tool like Mixpanel. We skipped this step today because you can watch it in the other videos. We already have a lot of events coming in. And the good thing is, because this is a well-established process for us, it was super simple for us to add the new onboarding events here as well. When we have a quick look into how the data looks like, we have different kind of things. Here we have the important account subscription created event. that we're all trying to improve. But as already said, it's a lagging metric. We cannot improve it directly. And then here we have the new onboarding events that we work together with the development team to get this kind of data. We eventually sourced it from the database because the product engineers also save this information if someone has already started an onboarding, because they don't want to show the onboarding again when you already watched it or when you just clicked it away and say, I'm not interested. That's great. So we could just hook up in the database table. We're just integrating it and just derive the events from that. Again, there are videos in my channel explaining how to do this. We have everything there. Now, this could be a place where we could already throw it over the fence. So we could already say to product team, look, you have a good understanding. This is the metric tree. These are the things that you want to have. These are the events. Good luck. Go ahead. And I definitely can say I know product teams who can start off at this point and can do all the work themselves. It always comes down to how data literate a product team is. I worked with product teams who are highly data literate. For them, this would be the perfect takeover point where they could start and running, do their own things. In my experience, most of the product teams, we should do at least one step further. Let me quickly show what I do, because I will not build the final kind of dashboards. I want to translate what we have here, like the different kind of metrics that we have in here. I want to have them in Mixpanel as well. Panel doesn't have a metric layer yet. It might come in the future, but there are ways to work around that. What I usually do is I create something which I call, let's call it onboarding metrics. And this is a report where I design metrics for the first time with the purpose that product can go in there and they can just copy my definition that I have here and use it in different kind of other reports. It's not 100% bulletproof. They can still come up with their own kind of things. But at least like this is something that you can train on and it's pretty straightforward, especially when you always do it in the same way. Every new feature gets in a metrics toolbox. And so everyone who knows I want to work with the feature, they can go in here. And so, for example, you can still say this report here is data team owned. This is our responsible. We will extend it when we introduce new metrics. We will extend it. We will revisit it to see, okay, maybe we have to refine the definition of some. And like the product team can just copy this stuff from here. Let me get started. So we wanted to have something about, okay, onboarding started. How many people started onboarding? Okay, this is pretty straightforward. We have onboarding started, unique users, totally makes sense to do this on a user level. Okay, we have metric number 1, we have now here. And again, like this kind of definition, they can now build similarly in different kind of other reports. Then we wanted to have onboarding video watched. Okay, let's do this one. We add a new event, watched. Our second one, then we had the metric onboarding success rate. We introduce a formula and we say, okay, this is also pretty straightforward. This is B divided by A. And if we want to really have it as a percentage, we multiply it with 100. And here we have our success rate. We now have 3 metrics. So let's maybe rename this to onboarding success rate. We can now save this. So we can save it to a new board. And so we can just call this data and then onboarding metrics. We can then share it with the product team. The product team can just go in here and they can just, in the end, they can just save it as new. And then they can here create based on these kind of different kind of metrics. We can do one thing important to know. So we cannot do this for this because it's quite obvious. But here, this is also like what I will do is we can save this as a shared formula. So it makes it a lot easier to share it with other people. Right now, I don't have other people in this project, but I could now go in there and can share it with the product team, for example. This makes it really nice when I have formulas that in the end calculate a metric that I can then just share it like this. At some point, I will hope that Mixpanel provide this for this as well. It's straightforward that this creates this, but in the end, like if I want to have, let's say, a metric onboarding started, we named the events like this, so it's pretty obvious. But sometimes you don't have this obvious connection. So sometimes you have an event that names differently, or you filter it down by specific kind of things. And so this, you definitely want to know how this is constructed so that you can save it. Okay, so that's great. Let me quickly save this. With this, we have a really good foundation for our product team already. We can even go then one step further. I said this is more like the data team that we work on, but we could, for example, introduce the new user valuable experience rate. So just to quickly show you how we could do that, we could go in there. It's a bit more complicated to construct. This usually just works when we create a cohort, because we are looking at specific kind of behavior and we want to group people based on this behavior, and then we can calculate how many people are actually within this kind of cohort. Naturally, we need to see first seen in the last, let's say last 30 days. So we define a new user if someone signs up in the last 30 days. So this is our first requirement that we need. And then we can say, okay, users who, we do a very simple one. So at least share the board totally greater than or equal to 1. We are looking at new users who have been there for the last 30 days and they share the board at least 1 or more times, also like within the last 30 days. This can be our definition for a new user with VX. It's not the rate yet, so the rate is something we have to calculate later, but this is a new user with VX. And this can become more complex. So we could, for example, add another criteria that they can do. You can say, when we track how many people download the board as a PDF or as a PNG, we can do this as well. This is new VX users. So we can create this kind of cohort. And just to show you and finish, this is, so let's quickly go back in our metrics board. And what we can now do as well is, you might not know this, but in Mixpanel, you can add cohorts the same way as you add metrics. And so here we have our new VX users. And so we can add them here as well. As we can see here, so our VX users, since we get a lot of new users in here, this, let's say, the visualization of that is definitely not useful. So the toolbox is not really meant as a visualization. It's more like where I can find the different kind of metrics that I can then use to do my kind of report. Again, like we get a lot of new users and but now what, let's say, even like product can do is, so they can now start to experiment a little bit with that. They can, for example, say, okay, I want to see people who have watched the onboarding videos, did they became new VX users? They had some training, and so they know that they can analyze the direct way. So let's say from onboarding video watch to account subscription created. The onboarding watch is something totally new, and so it's not really out there so long, but we can already see at least 65 people have done this. And of course, we can then also break it down by the different kind of cohorts. What we can see here is that with the new VX users, so when someone watched the onboarding videos, they are more likely to share a board. And when they have shared a board, they are much more likely to create a new subscription. So this is already an insight. These early numbers are pretty low yet, but this is already a first indicator that the work the product basically has started definitely helps them. And this is something, at least like when I work with product teams, when product team has all the metrics that they need to analyze this, then they have a clear understanding where this all sits within the big picture. They can now start to analyze. The good thing is, if you have this foundation in here, this is what I meant. So if you have this foundation here, this has been included in all the process when the team was working on the feature. You then have the data set provided for them that they can now go on from follow-up questions to more insights. And it might be that at some point they say, look, we are missing some kind of, let's say, properties that would be important for us to do. This is something, again, that can come back to the data team provided. But this is a totally different thing than coming back to the data team saying, yeah, you have to extend the reporting with X, Y, that. It takes a lot longer. Just providing a property is usually a lot faster than building the whole thing end to end. This is the level of self-service analytics that, at least in my experience, really works with product teams, because you build a foundation which makes it easy for the product team to really understand, okay, I can take this building blocks, and with this I can really understand how the things we are working on and building on are impacting other things to really understand. And you will see this, like they always work in this kind of setup. So the next feature they do, maybe they go on returning users and so on, but they are always like in the same kind of system. And with that, the understanding of the whole system and the impact on this becomes a lot better. This is my approach. If you have different kind of experience with self-service analytics and product teams, just let me know. So I would definitely love to hear about your experience. If you like the video, just give it a like. If you like the channel, subscribe it to watch a new video coming up, and I see you in the next video.